Alright, moving on from VS Code extensions, this video is going to be about VS Code tips and tricks that will make your life using VS Code much better. These are tips and tricks that I've learned through experimentation and also watching the shorts from VS Code's YouTube channel. And here's a list of the most useful tips and tricks that I found. The first step is about setting the default language for a new file. So typically when you create a new file in VS Code, you'll be asked which language you want to have this file written in. And that can be a bit annoying because maybe you're working on a JavaScript project and you just want to create new JavaScript files on the go. The way to fix this is to go into your settings by doing Command comma or Control comma and searching for the default file language. And if you scroll down, you should be able to see the file's default language over here, which will determine the language of the new file that you create. So you can type in, let's say, Python or JavaScript if that's the language you're working with. But an even better solution is to actually use this active editor language. So whichever language the file you're currently editing is in, when you create a new file, that's going to be the language of the new file. So essentially what this means is that if I put this over here and go into the JavaScript file and do a Command N to create a new file, that file will be in JavaScript. Likewise, if you create a new file in a Python file, then the new file will be Python as well. The next step is one that combines both the find and the multiple cursors. So let's say you're in a typical file, and if you do Command F, you can see that you can search for text using the default match case, or you can do by matching the whole word, or you can do it using regular expressions. And the thing about regular expressions is that it's actually not very complicated. So say you want to find the title and meta text, then you can type in title and use this OR symbol to search for meta as well. And you can see that you have 4 matches over here. And to edit all of these at once, you can do Option Enter or Alt Enter. And there you get a cursor at each of these matching cases. And you can even move the cursor by doing Option arrow keys. So Option left will move your cursor to the left. And so you can imagine this will be very useful if you're editing file names and you want to append, let's say, a folder in front of your file name. Then you can easily search for, let's say, JPEG and PNG, something like this. And you can add a cursor using Option or Alt Enter and use the Option or Alt arrow keys to navigate your cursor. If let's say you just want to replace the words, then you can use the find and replace function in VS Code by clicking on this arrow over here and replace them with, let's say, some other word. And you can step through one by one to replace each of these cases. The next step is about managing trust in your VS Code workspaces. If you've ever opened up a new project within VS Code, you will likely have seen the pop-up that will ask you whether you trust the authors of that folder. So for instance, if I have cloned a new repo in my desktop, and let's say I navigate to it and I want to open it up in VS Code, then I get this pop-up asking me if I trust the authors of the files in this folder. And of course, you can go ahead and click this, yes, I trust the authors. But frankly, this can get a bit annoying if you're working on new projects all the time. So the way to go around this is to go into your settings over here and click on the Manage Workspace Trust. So here you can actually specify which folders exactly you want VS Code to trust. So in this case, you can see things can get a bit messy if you are always going to manually indicate your trust for each project. So one way to go around this is to add a new folder. So you can add all your projects to this particular folder. Let's say your projects folder, which I have over here, and I can trust this folder. So every time you create a new project, you can put it inside your personal projects folder so that VS Code will know to trust these folders whenever you open them up. The next few tips and tricks are more of shortcuts, which I've learned along the way. So for example, to insert a new line below, you can just do Command Enter. To insert a new line above, you can do Command Shift Enter. And just like that, you save a few keystrokes of having to navigate between the start and the end of your lines. Another useful tip is, let's say you want to select a very long tag. So if, for example, you had a very long div and you want to select all of the contents of the div, one way you could do this is to scroll all the way down and see where the div matches up along this line and select the whole thing like this. But a more efficient way is to actually just do Command-Shift-P and type in balance and balance outward, and this will automatically select all the contents of that div and the div itself. If let's say you only want to select the contents within the div, then you can do balance inward, and this will select everything within that div. I think this is really quite a useful shortcut, so I would actually recommend that you map a key binding to this function. If you do balance outward and click on the settings over here to add your own keyboard shortcut. So if I click on this, you can see that I can edit the shortcut. By default, you won't see any key binding there, but just click on the plus sign if you don't have any key bindings currently set. Once you click on that, you can actually just type in the keyboard shortcut that you want to associate with this function. So for me, I go with Ctrl-Option-X for balancing outward, and you can also do the same for balancing inward. You can go to the settings again, click on this, and for me I added Ctrl-Option-Z because Z and X are right next to each other on the keyboard, but feel free to use whatever you're comfortable with. Another very useful function is to wrap certain contents in some text. So let's say I have a new file over here and I want to create a list. So let's say I have an apple, and if I were to make this a list item, one way I could do this is to actually do Command-Shift-P and search for wrap. So I can wrap this with some abbreviation. And in this case, I'm going to wrap it with a li, and you can see that immediately we have the li written out for us over here. To accept the changes, just click enter, and there you have it. In fact, you can even add class names to your text. So for example, if you do, again, wrap this list item in a unordered list, and let's give it a class of my list. And you can see that as I type, the changes are being made on the spot, on the go. Again, click enter to accept the changes. Again, this is a very useful shortcut that I would recommend you also create a key binding for. So again, do Command-Shift-P, click on the settings icon, and I've set mine to Ctrl-Option-W for wrap. So you can click on the icon over here to add a key binding or edit the current key binding. So now if I go back to that file, let's say type in Apple, and let's say I can do Ctrl-Option-W, which is the key binding that I've set. And then I can say I want an unordered list, and inside that I want a list item with a class of item. So very easily you can edit your HTML text just like that. In fact, this also works with multiple lines. So let's say you want to select the lines over here, and again I can use my key binding Ctrl-Alt-W, and let's say I want to wrap this in some hit, and there we have it right there. Or if you want to wrap on multiple lines, so let's say you have here, let's say you have apple and you have orange, and you want to wrap each of these as a list item. So you can do this by adding multiple cursors. To do that, you can do Option Command arrow keys. So in this case, Option Command up to add a cursor, and again Ctrl-Alt-W to wrap each of this as a list item and give each of them a class of fruit. So really quick and easy to use. So those were the 6 tips and tricks that I found really useful in VS Code, and I hope that they also improve your VS Code experience as well. If you have any other tips and tricks, do share them in the comment section below. And if you like the video, do give it a like, share it, and consider subscribing for more such videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.